So, after 6 seasons of Peaky Blinders and a 4-year gap since the show ended, the movie that concludes the saga is finally upon us. Cillian Murphy returns as Thomas Shelby in Peaky Blinders: The Immortal Man, also starring Barry Keoghan, Rebecca Ferguson, Stephen Graham and Tim Roth. In the movie, set against the backdrop of the Blitz, Tommy Shelby is retired and living in some cottage away from the drama of Birmingham, wallowing in the grief of his dead family members and writing a memoir. Meanwhile, the Peaky Blinder gang is being run by his son Duke, played by Keoghan, who is shamelessly using the fallout of the bombing of Birmingham to his advantage, stealing, for example, weapons from a bombed factory that were intended for the war effort. There's a conscious effort from the film to showcase that Duke's methods and sensibilities lack the family and communal element that was so important to the original Peaky Blinders. As a result, Tommy's sister Ada, now an MP, comes to him, asking for support for Brom and for him to reel in his reckless son, something Tommy refuses to do. With Duke running rampant and his powers at their peak, he is approached by Jeffrey Epstein, played by Tim Roth, representing a maniacal regime who enjoy blowing up innocents, and seeks to influence Duke to help the Germans' war effort, in a scheme involving flooding the UK with counterfeit banknotes which will crash the economy. And as the movie's trailer shows, Duke feels no loyalty to his nation, so is happy to help the Germans for a buck. If you want my thoughts on the series, just to give you a bit of perspective as to what angle I'm coming at the film with, I really enjoyed the first 2 seasons of the show. The third one was a little weird, the fourth was really great fun, and the final 2 seasons I felt were a bore, a real chore to sit through, where all the things I didn't like about the show were dialed up to 11. So it's fair to say I don't really consider myself a proper fan of the show, I guess. And if you want a longer review of this series, you can check out a series retrospective I did on it on the channel. I think it's important for me to mention my opinion on the series before this review, because I made a big mistake in between watching the film and making this review, which has led me to conclude something. The mistake is that before reviewing the film, I went online and took a look at what fans of the show were saying about the movie, which is something I always avoid before a review to stop my thoughts being subconsciously affected by the consensus. But the conclusion I made as a result of poking around is that it appears the movie is giving Peaky Blinders fans real grief. Perhaps it's a case that casual fans like me will actually enjoy it more than hardcore fans of the show, who seem to be finding nitpicks that have given them issues. Well, nitpicks might be too strong of a word. Certainly, there's issues with the films that are legitimate complaints. The plot involving Arthur, Thomas's brother, has angered a lot of fans. There's a strange lack of Finn, who was present in every season of the show and swore revenge against his family in the final season. There's no mention of Lizzie. There's an abandonment of plots that seem to have been building from previous seasons. There's what happens to Ada in the film. There's Tommy's very strange, ambivalent attitude towards being told his other son, Charlie, is fighting on the front lines, as he once was during the Great War. I mean, you'd think he'd show some concern at least. And there's a very easy fix that could have been done here, with the memoir that Tony is writing being written or dedicated to his son Charlie. But instead it feels like he just doesn't care about his other son in the film. There were other suggestions also that the writers hadn't done their homework when penning the script. I mean, Duke's mother was some random girl who Tommy didn't even remember. Yet in the film he's flooded by memories when her twin sister meets him. And Duke mentions Aunt Polly to Ada in the movie, as if they're all part of the family, as if they've all got history, but Duke was introduced in the final season and never met Polly. And overall, cynical fans would not necessarily be hyperbolic to suggest the movie was cleaning house, getting rid of older characters to make way for a new generation and a new series of Peaky Blinders, which, as I've talked about in a previous video, is going to happen and is currently filming. But overall, I thought it was alright. I didn't think it was amazing, but neither did I think it was the assassination of the show that some are making it out to be. But again, I appreciate I'm not as emotionally invested as many people are. In fact, some of these changes worked in my favour, seeing as though I couldn't remember many of the plot lines and characters in season 5 and 6, so it was useful for me that they were dropped. I imagine many fans of the show will be frustrated at the ending of the show seemingly being undone. I mean, didn't Tommy realise he wasn't dying and essentially gets on that horse to go and get down to business. But in the opening of the film, he is living in self-exile. Personally, I didn't mind that too much. As mentioned, I'm not a big fan of the later Peaky seasons anyway, and there's a big enough time gap between season 6 and the movie that a fair number of things could have happened for Thomas to have decided to bow out. And in that time, the stories of Finn, Lizzie and such may have been done and dusted. It's part of good world building if not every single thing is explained. I just sat down and watched it with the intention that, right, I get there's going to be a lot of modern music, slow-mo scenes and cringy brooding that's annoyed me throughout the show, but I'm happy to roll with it and enjoy it for what it is. And funnily enough, the movie starts with a few minutes of slow build-up, intriguing music, and you're thinking, But then out of nowhere, these electric guitars start blasting and the first English lines of dialogue in the film are, "Hail fucking Hitler." And I thought, yeah, this is definitely set in the Peaky Blinders universe. And I chose to accept the goofiness, of which there were a few moments here and there, including one bizarre scene where Tommy is threatened in a pub and he decides to unpin a grenade and put it in the shirt of the offender, presumably banking on the hope that the guy would run out of the pub flailing, politely blowing himself up outside on his own, and not freezing in shock and taking out the entire pub, Tommy included, with him. There's a few films the Immortal Man reminded me of, The Dark Knight Rises being one of them, also a film where your hero is unfortunately retired after his previous outing, having to be coaxed to get his mojo back because of shenanigans happening in his old stomping ground. Tommy mopes around his house for about half an hour of the film's runtime, with the film synergizing different classic elements of the show and interconnecting them throughout the runtime. Tommy and his demons and ghosts, the Peakies beating on people, slow-mo walking, it's all here, but it all feels connected, and it feels purposeful. Like the Tommy Shelby walk, with his suit and razor cap. He isn't just aimlessly strutting around as he did from time to time in the show. The first time he does it in the film, he is driven by a clear goal, and you are right there with him in the moment. There are other complaints I tended to have with the show, which the movie tackled pretty well. I've always found the constant self-serious brooding, eye-rolling and annoying. Like Tommy being told in a scene from the show he needs to wear a mask in the hospital, and he says something like, "I am wearing a mask." And here, Ada tells him there's a war going on. I mean, it's serious stuff. A factory of women were just blown up. The fate of Britain is at stake. And he's like, "I've got a war of my own going on, Ada, in me head." A bit of perspective, please, Tommy. But the point I'm making is that rather than have this be seen as cool aura farming, the cringe factor seems to be incorporated into the story, with other characters criticizing him for sitting on the sidelines. As one character remarks, there's only one man who can stop his son, and he's writing a fucking book. And where the series often portrays the antics of the Peaky Blinders gang as cool, that kind of behaviour is condemned in the film. Ada tells us that Duke is running the gang like it's 1919 all over again, implying the Peaky shenanigans of old is not something to admire and emulate, and Duke's way of running things is clearly established by the film as something that is bad. I guess what I'm saying is that it rubs me the wrong way when people come away from films and shows like The Sopranos, Scarface and The Wolf of Wall Street with the wrong message, where they think of the titular characters as people to copy, and certainly the Sigma male grindset videos on the internet, pseudo-deep Facebook posts, and people filming themselves walking around shopping malls cosplaying as Peaky Blinders is the height of cringe. But a problem I had with it was it always felt like the show itself was in love with how cool Tommy and his gang were. But the film takes a few steps back from that and suggests that maybe we're looking at Tommy's early reign with rose-tinted glasses. But going back to the opening half hour, it's established very early on in the film that Arthur Shelby is dead. Expected, I guess, but it was still a gut punch seeing Tommy step back from the grave for it to reveal Arthur's name, especially seeing as though they pulled a bait and switch in the scene, as Tommy had been talking about his daughter Ruby and her death. I guess I was maybe holding out for a secret cameo, but Paul Anderson's problems with the drugs and the law have been no secret, with the actor being unable to clean his act up to play a role in the movie. In fact, and spoiler alert for the film here, it's established that Tommy killed Arthur after essentially becoming sick of his antics, with the straw that broke the camel's back being Arthur stealing from him, crashing his car as he tries to escape, and then trying to shoot Tommy, thinking he was the devil after him, leading Thomas to strangle him. And as he later says, it wasn't to put him out of his misery, it wasn't a mercy kill. or even an ambiguous murder where Thomas is conflicted as to what the actual reason he went through with it was. But it's that he straight up just didn't want to deal with his shit anymore. He says as much. I understand fans' frustration at that, not least because there were other interesting ways they could have written Arthur out, like perhaps him offing himself after seeing Tommy's supposed grave from season 6, and Tommy stricken with grief as a result. Tommy actually being the one to end Arthur is difficult to swallow for a man who valued family so much, who had been through thick and thin with Arthur. I mean, I guess if we sit down and think about it, there's been so many incidents, and a great deal of time has passed since the show ended, and we don't know how much their relationship had deteriorated. But even still, it's something the film reveals quite a bit later after we actually find out that Arthur is dead. So some could interpret it as a cheap plot twist, really. But anyway, what I was going to say was that it sure felt like a kick in the teeth to the Arthur character. And I wonder if there's a meta element to it, in that the show creator Stephen Knight is saying Arthur repeatedly letting Tommy down, leading the latter to kill his own brother, represents Knight putting up with Anderson's antics until he couldn't anymore and wrote him out. You know, one film the Immortal Man reminds me of was The Many Saints of Newark, the prequel to The Sopranos, another film that came out years after a beloved show ended and caused fans to riot. There's a few things, like it kind of doing the twin thing from that film, beloved characters missing, and this aroma in the air that perhaps Stephen Knight wanted to make a World War II conspiracy blitz film and meshed it with the Peaky Blinders to get the film greenlit, much like the theory that David Chase had been wanting to make a film about the Newark race riots for years, but could not get funding until he placed the story into the Sopranos universe. In any case, if it's a straight up comparison, The Immortal Man certainly incorporates the real life stuff into it better than Saints did. And a minor sin the film has that it shares with many Saints is the supernatural. In The Sopranos, there was always the suggestion that ghosts exist, that there's an afterlife, but it flirts with this phenomenon. It always is at the edge. It never goes into full-blown affair territory. But in Many Saints, Chrissy is literally narrating the story from hell. Similarly, Peaky Blinders had this connection with gypsy culture, the myths and curses and such, which could possibly be explained rationally in the show. But in the movie, there's things that happen that leave no real way of getting around the fact that ghosts and spirits are actually real. I think the scale of the film is good. Tommy getting involved in just one of many anti-Nazi schemes. The way the show was going, you'd think he'd end up in a bloody fist fight with Hitler and single-handedly end World War II or something. And with these kind of films that follow a show, you run the risk of making something too epic and betraying the spirit of the show, or a film that is too small-scale and ends up feeling like just an overlong episode of the show. This got the balance right, I think. It did kind of run out of puff with the climax though. I haven't talked about the plot much in this review, but the third act is not too dissimilar to the ending of a typical Peaky Blinders season. Tommy seemingly outmaneuvered until it's revealed he has a master plan all along. It's a rather tired formula. I mean, is there anyone who didn't think that the boats would have explosions on them, or that Tommy would have saved Duke from Epstein, or that Duke would push Thomas out of the way with the incoming car? Looking back, I do prefer the first half of the film to the second. Maybe it's because it felt paced similar to the show. Then halfway through, Tommy literally barges his way into the pigsty and without a word of warning starts beating the shit out of his son. And within minutes, they're on the same side, plotting against the Germans. With the speed run second half of this film, the blink and you miss it appearance of loved characters or the complete absence of them, the story elements that are touched upon but not delved into deeply, like Duke's resentment and anger against his father. It's a cliche to say this now, but one wonders why this wasn't just another season instead of being a movie. So all in all, I sat down and I watched it on a Friday night alone. Everyone else was in bed. It held my attention. I thought, okay, fine, not as shabby as it could have been, and that was it. But of course, fans of the show are not as forgiving, and I'm on board with some of the complaints. With others, not so much. Like, one thing I've seen repeated is the idea that half the movie is Tommy oral farming in a music video. I mean, doesn't he do that for like half the series as well? But many of the decisions made for the film are admittedly strange, as if this was perhaps a first draft that went into production. One that sticks out for me is the slate cleaning when it comes to the older characters. I mean, wouldn't it have been cool for Ada to morph into an Aunt Polly type character for the new series? That ain't happening anymore, that's for sure. So what do you make of the new Peaky Blinders movie? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.